He joined the Nazi party. He worked as a spy. His secrets helped Germany invade two countries. He used people as cheap labor. He cheated on his wife again and again. He drank a lot. And before the war even started, he failed at business over and over. This is not the guy you'd expect to become a hero. But somehow, this same man spent every penny he had to save more than 1,000 people from death. How? How does a spy, a cheater, a failed businessman, become one of the most unlikely heroes of World War II? The movie made him famous, but the real story is stranger, darker, and way more human. This is the real Oskar Schindler, and he's nothing like the guy you saw on screen. On September 1st, 1939, Germany invaded Poland. Just 2 days later, Britain and France declared war on Germany, marking the beginning of World War II. As German forces took control of Poland and occupied cities like Kraków, the war created new business opportunities for those willing to profit from it. Seeing that opportunity, Schindler moved to occupied Poland. With the support of Nazi officials, he planned to take over a factory and build his fortune from the war. At that moment, saving lives wasn't part of the plan, but making money was planned. Soon after arriving in Kraków, Schindler leased an abandoned enamelware factory known as Deutsche Enamelwaren Fabrik, or simply DEF. To run it, he partnered with Itzhak Stern, a Jewish accountant who helped him navigate the system and manage the business. Most of the factory's workers were Jewish, not because Schindler wanted to save them, but because the Nazis classified them as forced labor, making them far cheaper than Polish workers. For Schindler, it was a smart business decision. But as the war grew darker, the factory would become something far more important than a place to make money. Everything began to change in March 1943. The Nazis ordered the liquidation of the Kraków Ghetto. Thousands of Jewish families were forced from their homes. Those considered fit for work were sent to labor camps. Many others were murdered on the spot or deported to extermination camps. Schindler watched the operation from a nearby hillside. In the movie, one image stands out above all: a young girl wearing a bright red coat, walking alone through the chaos. It's one of the film's most unforgettable scenes. But here's the reality. There is no historical evidence that Schindler saw a specific girl in a red coat. The child was created by director Steven Spielberg as a symbolic character, representing the innocence of the victims and helping the audience see the horrors of the Holocaust through Schindler's eyes. The liquidation of the Kraków Ghetto was real. The girl in the red coat was not. But the impact of witnessing that brutality is believed to have played a major role in changing Schindler from a man chasing profit into someone determined to save lives. With the Kraków Ghetto destroyed, the surviving Jewish prisoners were transferred to a newly expanded labor camp called Płaszów. The man in charge was Amon Goth. If Schindler's story is about humanity, Goth's is the complete opposite. Known for his extreme cruelty, Goth ruled the camp through fear. Prisoners were beaten, tortured, and executed for the smallest mistakes, or for no reason at all. Under his command, thousands of people suffered unimaginable brutality. In one of the movie's most disturbing scenes, Goth steps onto the balcony of his villa overlooking the camp and casually shoots prisoners with a rifle, as if they were targets. And here's the real picture of Amon Goth, standing on the balcony of his villa with a rifle in his hands. As horrifying as it seems, this scene wasn't simply Hollywood fiction. Survivors testified that Goth often fired at prisoners from the balcony of his villa. While the movie dramatizes specific moments, his random acts of violence and terror are well documented. For the prisoners of Płaszów, every sunrise could be their last. And credit where it's due. Ralph Fiennes delivered a chilling performance as Amon Goth, capturing the cruelty and menace of one of history's most notorious Nazi war criminals. After witnessing the liquidation of the Kraków Ghetto and the unimaginable brutality inside Płaszów, something in Schindler began to change. The man who had come to Poland to profit from the war slowly started risking everything to save lives. Instead of seeing his Jewish workers as cheap labor, he began seeing them as people. To protect them, Schindler spent enormous amounts of his own money. He bought expensive jewelry, rare gifts, and costly bottles of alcohol, anything he could use to bribe Nazi officials. The movie portrays this part of his story quite accurately. Schindler quickly realized that Amon Goth could be influenced by expensive gifts, alcohol, and constant flattery, so he used that weakness to his advantage. Time and again, Schindler bribed Goeth to keep his Jewish workers out of danger. He even persuaded him to allow a separate subcamp for the workers from Schindler's factory, shielding many of them from the daily brutality inside Płaszów. It wasn't enough to end the suffering, but for hundreds of Jewish workers, it meant another day alive. As the war began turning against Germany, Schindler moved his factory to a place called Brünnlitz. Officially, he claimed it was so he could continue producing supplies for the war, but the real reason was very different. He wanted to move his workers as far away from Auschwitz as possible. Together with several trusted people, he helped create what we now know as Schindler's List, a list containing about 1,200 names, people who would be saved. Now, here's where the movie simplifies the story. In the film, most of the credit for creating the list goes to Itzhak Stern, Schindler's accountant, played by Ben Kingsley. And yes, Stern was a real person, and he did help, but in reality, much of the list was written and organized by Mietek Pemper, a Jewish prisoner who worked as the personal secretary and note-taker for Amon Goth, the brutal camp commandant. Pemper used his position to secretly help save lives. The movie combines Pemper along with several other real people into a single character, Itzhak Stern. It makes the story easier to follow, even if it isn't completely accurate.
The unconditional surrender of Germany has just been announced. At midnight tonight, the war is over.
As the war came to an end, Nazi Germany began to fall. On May 8, 1945, Germany officially surrendered, ending World War II in Europe. Soon after, Amon Goth was captured by American soldiers. He was then sent to Poland, where he was put on trial for the crimes he had committed during the war. The court found him guilty, and on September 13, 1946, he was executed by hanging in Kraków, the same city where so many of his victims had suffered under his command. One of the Nazis' most brutal camp commanders had finally been brought to justice. At the time of his execution, Amon Göth showed no remorse or regret for his war crimes. Here's something most people don't know. After the war, Schindler was broke, completely out of money. And here's the strange part. He also had to flee to avoid Soviet authorities. As a former member of the Nazi Party and someone who had profited from the war, he feared being punished. Over the next 20 years, he moved between Germany and Argentina. He tried business again and failed again and again. He spent much of the rest of his life living in poverty. The people he had saved, known as the Schindler Juden, were the very people who helped support him financially for the rest of his life. Schindler died on October 9, 1974 in Hildesheim, West Germany. As he had requested, he was buried on Mount Zion in Jerusalem. He remains the only former Nazi Party member to be buried there with that honor. Today, more than 8,500 people are alive because their families were saved by Oskar Schindler. The movie ends very differently. It finishes with the end of the war. Schindler says goodbye to the people he saved and leaves as they celebrate him. But it never shows the difficult years that followed, the poverty, the failed businesses, or the fact that he survived only because the people he had rescued refused to abandon him. That gives the story a cleaner and happier ending. But the real ending is far more human. Saving more than 1,000 lives didn't bring Schindler wealth. It cost him almost everything.